Greetings, church. It's Wednesday afternoon, April 29th. You've probably heard that the governor has relaxed social distancing standards for larger entities like churches over the weekend. Man, we were super excited to hear that. Seems like a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. I have to admit, we're a bit surprised by that. Weren't expecting that. But nevertheless, immediately began praying about that, began talking to area churches about that, began talking to medical professionals in the community, trying to get a sense of what we should do. Last night, we and the elders had a meeting to further discuss this. We have come to some preliminary plans, but before I share those, I think it's important for us to talk broadly about two different things. First of all, I think it's important for us to remember why we're here in the first place. We have been striving to hold in tension three commands of Scripture. Hebrews 10:25 tells us not to neglect the gathering of God's people. And then in Romans 13:1 and following and other passages like that, we're told to submit to our governing authorities. Now, we know that that command to submit to a governing authority is not absolute. The apostles themselves were told not to preach Christ, and their response, of course, is, whom should we listen to? You, the government, or Lord? So clearly that command is not absolute. But the third command is to love your neighbor as yourself. As we wrestled this down, as you know, we concluded that our governing authorities were seeking, actually in their own way, to uphold that third command, to love our neighbor. And we agreed with that. And not only that, but we felt it would be terribly dishonoring to the name of Christ for us to go against our governing authorities in this circumstance. I know you all understand that. You've been very patient with us. We've been very grateful for the technology that we have and the ability to engage in elements of the worship service with our live streaming. But we're super anxious to get back together. And so we, as we thought about this, recognized that in some ways, planning for reentry is even more difficult than the plans we had to make in disbanding our gathering. And we want to, in that vein, I wanted to point to the second broad category of thought, and that is how do we think through responding to each other as we re-enter this regathering phase. First of all, we all know that we're not going to be able to immediately return back to what's normal. Even in these guidelines for regathering, there are social distancing measures that we're expected to uphold, things like 6 feet between each family. And that's just going to mean that this isn't normal, that we're going to have to do things logistically that are different. And that's going to require patience. It's going to be uncomfortable. So in that vein, the second thing I wanted to talk about was really three words. First of all, unity, then humility, and then charity. Unity. The scriptures command unity. Jesus prays for the unity of the church in John 17. But our unity isn't based in our agreement on what the government is saying. It's not based in an agreement on the science. It's not based in our agreement on opinion. It's based in the gospel. We're unified around Christ who's come for us, Christ who died for us and who was raised for us. Humility. The gospel leads to humility. The gospel causes humility. It tells us that we're broken. It tells us that we don't know. In fact, that's been my motto so far for this year. I don't know. I've been saying that a lot. The thing that comforts me is I know I'm in really good company because a lot of people have been saying, I don't know. But that chastens my heart. It humbles me. It tells me that only God knows. And if we understand that, that humility can lead to the third thing, and that is charity. Charity toward one another. There's going to be opportunity for us to die to self in this. There's going to be opportunity for us to humble our own hearts, set our own convictions and opinions aside when it comes to things like logistical measures within the gathering, and express charity toward one another. There are people amongst us who are in very different circumstances than you. They think differently, they have different medical concerns, and all of these things shape our responses. And so I want us to remember that we've been called to be unified around the cross of Christ. We've been called to be humbled by the cross of Christ. And we've been called to show charity to one another on the basis of the cross of Christ. As we move forward, we're asking that you love your neighbor locally in our own community by cheerfully and gladly gathering in as much as you can and under the guidelines that we'll set forward. So, we have many logistical things to work through, but we have come to the conclusion that May 17th is the soonest that we can regather. And the main reason for that is, though the governor has said May 10th would be our first Sunday, there is a great deal of confusion here locally about what our local community thinks and what they will actually do and say going forward. In interaction not only with them and also in interaction with the other area churches, many of them anyway, we've come to the conclusion that May 17th is the better date for us to gather. In keeping with what Two Rivers originally had said for their reopening dates and what our county is likely to say. All that said, there are a number of logistical things that we're going to need to work through. How do we achieve 6 foot spacing in our sanctuary? How do we protect one another, love each other in this context? And we haven't wrestled all those things down yet. Suffice it to say this, we are not going to be able to do this in a way that is normal. And there are probably going to be things that will inconvenience one another and that will be uncomfortable. And so we're asking again for unity, for humility, and charity as we work these things through. But we're also asking for your prayers. We need wisdom. And I know that you have been praying for us, and I am absolutely confident that the unity of this church and our love for one another will prevail. And so I just want to encourage you in that. And encourage you, we've been praying for you. I know you've been praying for us, but would you continue to do that as we seek to make plans? So as we are able to set down what these plans are, we'll communicate those things and get them out to you as quickly as we can. And the last thing I want to say is that we need to hold that May 17th date loosely. If we've learned anything, things can change in this time. That too can change. And so we're hopeful and we're praying that that's what happens. But at the same time, we understand that that could change. So thank you for your prayers. We love you. And man, we're so excited about the prospect of getting back together in person for this corporate worship that God intended us to engage in with one another. God bless you. You have an awesome day.